I want you to keep in mind the one part of the verse that Dave read earlier. May even be worth reading that Philippians passage again during the week after you hear the sermon. It'll bring those words to life in a different way. But just hear these few words again, that you are in no way intimidated by your opponents. That's behind what Jesus is speaking to us and preaching today. In no way be intimidated by your opponents. So there's a term that I believe accurately characterizes key parts of Jesus' ministry. That term is aggressive nonviolence. Sounds like a contradiction in terms, an oxymoron, right? Aggressive nonviolence. The truth is that aggressive nonviolence is not only who Jesus was, but also what he calls us, his followers, to be. Because in the face of powerful injustices in our world, whenever illegitimate forces seek to dominate, to control, to humiliate, to do violence, Jesus teaches us to be aggressive, or at the very least, assertive in our nonviolent response. That's the approach to countering these evils. Jesus then models how to assert our faith in loving ways that not only turn evil on its head, but reveal our genuine discipleship by treating the enemy with dignity. He speaks a word to the weak and to the violent protesters who garner so much media attention today. A little something for everyone. Aggressive nonviolence, however, does not seem to fit our common understanding of Jesus, right? I mean, persons picture Jesus as gentle, meek, and mild. The hymn we just sang, Jesus like a shepherd, lead us. So when he utters those immortal words from our gospel lesson, turn the other cheek, we assume that he's advocating a policy of surrender, of non-engagement, that ignores the problem, whatever the problem may be. Jesus presents himself, we think, as unwilling or unable to confront evil, playing the role of a wimp, an ancient Casper milquetoast for others to walk all over. Adding to our conception of Jesus as wimp is his advice to unselfishly give the shirt off of one's back. I mean, these very words make it clear that Jesus is some naive, bleeding heart, right? And his instructions to go the extra mile further confirm this idea of extending oneself even when there's nothing left to extend, when there's nothing left to give. Too bad, do it anyway. So I want to demonstrate this morning and next Sunday that these ideas that we have about Jesus, while, yes, they're lifted from his literal words, are improperly taken out of their first century context when Jesus spoke them. We have imposed a contemporary cultural meaning on Jesus and his teachings rather than a learned biblical meaning. Once again, this popular culture in which we all live has come to dominate Christianity rather than Jesus being its sole driving force. Because we tend to see him as the shepherd cuddling a cute little lamb in his arms, forgetting that a truly good shepherd may need to use his shepherd's crook his shepherd's staff to defend the flock from ravenous wolves. I mean, if Jesus was really as wimpy as perhaps we've been taught, as some persons suggest, then why was he so brutally executed? Consider that for a minute. I mean, wimps may bother us for their wishy-washy lack of backbone. We may say something like, get away from me, kid, you bother me. But we don't torture and crucify them, right? Plus, unassertive, non-aggressive Wally Cox cowards don't put themselves out there to die for a cause, as did Jesus. Pardon the reference to Wally Cox, who was this wimpy old guy on Hollywood Squares. Do you remember that show? Mousy, wimpy. He even made an appearance on the Beverly Hillbillies as a bird watcher in, his big state trooper kind of cap and little beige shorts and stuff. Wally Cox was kind of like the ultimate wimp. The voice of underdog, that's right, which you can still catch on MeTV out of Wilmington, Delaware. All right, sermon's going to go too long. Thank you, Rick. And you didn't get that reference to Wally Cox either, right? So I'm glad I explained it. Shows my age, sorry. Got to put up with an old preacher. What I'm saying is that we need to challenge this image of Jesus as wimp. And we need to do so by exploring these three oft-quoted lines from him. And I submit that the quotations have been reinterpreted by our culture to the point where they have become watered-down cliches, distantly removed from their original intent and meaning. The three sentences are regularly perceived as completely idealistic acts of non-resistance. They're portrayed as impractical, masochistic, even suicidal, if we were to do them, such that really no intelligent thinking individual would ever employ these ill-advised tactics. Now, in a magical world that we think the Bible is, in a magical world, those kinds of concepts may succeed, but certainly not in real life. But I also want to suggest that it is persons in power in our culture, illegitimate power, who push this agenda of Jesus as a powerless wimp. Why would they do that? Because they have the most to gain by keeping good people in their place, in their proper place, by preventing them from resisting and transforming the unjust status quo. Jesus is not just about creating individual transformation, but transforming the world. Making disciples for the transformation of the world was for years the United Methodist Church mission statement. 2 thumbs up on that one. But the unscrupulous folks don't want Jesus to be able to change you or the world any more than they want Jesus to challenge and change them. And so this incorrect, uninformed cultural spin on Jesus keeps people from rising up when we need to rise up. It seeks to prohibit innocent persons from asserting their God-given rights when they're wronged. It force feeds an industrial-sized portion of humble pie to people who are already humiliated. It insists people keep quiet, to neither speak nor act against injustice, which then all leads to passivity and surrender at best, and collusion with the enemy, and cowardice, even outright failing to oppose evil at worst. The stakes are high in how we interpret this very familiar passage. Because when we accept and instill the culture's spin, there is grave danger. You think turning the other cheek is going to get you smacked again. Try doing what these folks would have us do. I mean, it's to the point where we're not only embarrassed by what Jesus said and wish he had never said such crazy things, but you know what? There's a part of us, maybe a large part of us, that ends up dismissing Jesus' words. Bunch of falderall, bunch of wishful thinking, bunch of bogus fantasy, maybe even lies. And you know what? How do you argue against this? Why not dismiss them? They're impractical. They're unbelievable. They're lacking in credibility. We declare them undoable and really believe that they are. But when we do that, what happens? Well, we fail to live Jesus' instructions. And then, of course, we feel guilty about failing to do what Jesus taught. And then we count ourselves among those whom Jesus chided as being people of little faith. We end up adding insult to our injuries to ourselves. And so we relegate Jesus' words to pie-in-the-sky niceties from a well-meaning man 2,000 years ago, a man we believe was just woefully out of touch with reality. God bless his heart. How wrong we are. No wonder Christianity is on the decline in the West with such a discredited, impotent leader. Who wants to follow, let alone give one's life to that sort of wimpy individual? But please know that anytime the gospel becomes impossible to do, then our interpretation of it must be incorrect. The gospel is difficult, but it's not impossible. I mean, if it were impossible to do, then God would not have become incarnate in Jesus Christ to live among us and show us the best way to live in the first place. I mean, why teach us the impossible? It doesn't make sense to teach what could not ever be done. What a waste. God and Jesus only spent 33 years of life on this earth. Not going to waste that time teaching us to do the impossible. We got to reinterpret this. And so this, my friends, is where biblical literalism combined with biblical illiteracy have their most pernicious effect. Jesus did not preach and live a gospel of faithless inaction. Jesus' teaching is not an academic, intellectual thought experiment for pious, well-meaning individuals. It's a gift to which all of us can aspire and learn and live. What I'm saying, again, is that the contemporary culture mavens not only opine as to what they say Jesus meant, but impose their will on others. They have been arrogantly unwilling to study his words and his lifetime in order to learn what he really said and did. Some of Jesus' most important teachings, then, have been emasculated and reduced to the point where they have no effect or impact. Well, again, how wrong is that? I mean, is this truly what Jesus had in mind? Are his words little more than worn-out adages reminiscent of Poor Richard's Almanac? Or cute little ditties from some Hallmark card penned by the likes of Helen Steiner Rice? Is that all Jesus said is anymore? Because if so, then God's Son is a coward who espouses a similar course of inaction for you and me, his followers. A course that will never change anyone or anything for the better, let alone change the world. Well, either all of that is true that I have spoken this morning, or we have misunderstood him. I believe that our culture, and many of us, have misunderstood Jesus. Because a man who peacefully goes to Calvary is no wimp, is no coward. It takes much more bravery and valor to intentionally not fight back than to fight with a weapon. Think about that for a minute. It's braver to not fight back than to have 2 6-shooters to help you. Jesus always countered evil with good, and knowingly did so at his own peril. In other words, he fought. He fought bravely. He just fought differently. After all, he did say, I have overcome the world. He did not surrender by turning the other cheek, but he did turn the other cheek. So what did he mean? Let's get to it. Jesus says, if anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. By way of background information, it's important to know that striking a subordinate with the back of one's hand, a slap, was commonplace in this ancient Near Eastern society in which Jesus was living and operating. Masters did it to slaves, men did it to women, parents did it to children, Romans did it to persons who were not citizens of Rome. You may recall the trouble caused when Paul was ill-treated as a Roman citizen. Did you get to that in your Acts Sunday school class 2 weeks ago? So some of you are up on this, right? The rest of you will have to join Dave's class and do some remedial work. Slaves, women, children, and non-Romans were not a Roman man's equals. They were all subordinates. We might say lowlifes. Striking one's equal, however, was illegal. The law punished violence that hit a peer. That same law, though, was silent about hitting someone who was less than you. If you go to hit a peer, that's illegal, but you could hit somebody who was a subordinate. Jesus, unlike the law, was not silent on this particular matter. What the law allowed with subordinates, Jesus prohibited. In our lesson today, Jesus addresses an act not covered by the law, namely, striking a subordinate. So here's where the fun begins, and we're going to learn about this with a live demonstration. Now, I've asked Dave to help me demonstrate because he's up here and he's the liturgist. But I need to tell you, when I told people that I was going to preach this sermon, I had so many people lining up to smack me. So many people that Josh said, you know what, you should have put it out to bid and taken the highest bidder and made some money for the church. Too late, but a great idea. Live and learn. 20/20 hindsight. What was that? Number 1, yeah. Yeah, well, on my salary, you can't afford the bid, so. All right, so let me set this up, what Dave's going to do. Dave is going to be both my superior and my adversary. I'm his subordinate. Therefore, I'm going to kneel in front of him because in first century Palestine, subordinates knelt. All right? So when we get into position in a minute, Dave will fake a strong backhand slap across my face. Yeah, you got it. With his right hand, knocking my head to the side. All right, you ready, Dave? Are you all ready? Now, if the cross is in the way, you can stand up or move around because I know you're not going to want to miss this. We're going to have it recorded on tape for you to put on a continuous loop to say, look at our pastor. Bang, bang, bang. All right, Dave. So again, I'm kneeling. He's there. He's going to take his right. Just hold a minute. He's too anxious to do this, right? He's going to take his right hand. He said he was uncomfortable doing this. Oh, yeah, right? Sally was egging him on all week. So you're going to take your right hand, and we're going to do this in slow motion, but he is actually going to come into contact with my face. All right, God bless you. Go ahead. Now, if he had done that in full force, I'd be behind that black curtain, right? Okay, now stay there. So, knocks my head to the side, or maybe knocks me over. What does Jesus then say to do? Turn the other cheek. All right? I'm going to be a literalist. I'm going to follow Jesus' advice. I'm going to kneel again. I'm going to show you where my head was. I'm going to turn the other cheek because that's the way it's supposed to be. And Dave will once again take that right hand and do the same thing, only watch what happens this time because I've turned my head. Here is where we ended up a minute ago, and now I turn my head and try that again, Dave. Thank you. He missed. He failed to connect. I'm glad of that. But his hand flies right past my face. All right, so some of you are thinking, this is just sleight of hand, just an act of legerdemain, it's like magic, why not just hit me with the other hand, right? Because if I turn my head and he misses, all he got to do is hit me with the right hand and back, oh, there I go again. So why not hit me with his left hand? Please know that one could not use the left hand to hit someone, to hit anyone. That was a cultural taboo. Why? Well, there were rules for engagement, strictly enforced rules for engagement. The left hand, we're all adults here, was used for personal hygiene practices. Still the case in the Middle East today. So it could not be used to strike a person, no matter how lowly that individual is or was. To even give an obscene gesture, let alone strike a blow, with the left hand resulted in a severe penalty because it was a public health issue. Where's that hand been? And those of you with little ones, you understand that even better, right? So that option is out. But again, I know there's thinking folk among you, and you're saying, well, you know what? Why doesn't Dave just use his right fist? And instead of a slapping motion, how about an uppercut jab? That would have done it. First I end up back there, now I end up in the rafters, right? Well, you know what? That would have been treating me as an equal. Hear me out. I am not his equal. And he'd never treat me as his equal. He'd never elevate me to the point where I'd be thinking that I was his equal because he used a closed fist. You see, an open hand represents domination. A closed fist revealed equality, parity, as in a boxing match among equal contenders. We're not equals. I'm the inferior one. So a fist is a non-starter. Again, strict rules for engagement. So there are only two ways for this enemy to strike me a second time. He must either violate the cultural taboo by employing his left hand, or he must acknowledge me as his peer by using his fist. And again, to do that, he subjects himself to arrest, you know what the law said, for striking a peer without warrant, a peer who never did anything physically to hurt him. Either way, in the end, I come out ahead. When it's all said and done, yes, I got struck once. Such is life. But I don't get struck a second time. You saw it. My opponent swings and misses. I can still hear Harry Callis saying that. Swing and a miss. I maintain innocence by not retaliating. I follow Jesus' instructions to not violently resist, but I subtly resist, and I effectively resist. Outright resistance would have invited serious retribution. I mean, a slave hitting back, a woman hitting back, a foreigner hitting a Roman? No way. I would have been thrown in jail or worse. In following Jesus' command, though, the onus is on the aggressor. He's the one in the hot seat now. But also notice, this is important, I don't cower in submission, which is in itself is a rather boldly defiant act that removes any dimensions of domination or humiliation. My attacker is unable to instill shame in me or some sense of inferiority in me. Plus, I'm not running away. That would have been another option. Well, why don't you just run away? No, I'm not going to run away, which gives me a sense of esteem and control. Mahatma Gandhi, 1900 years after Jesus, wrote, "The first principle of nonviolent action is that of non-cooperation with everything humiliating." So when I turn and present the other cheek, notice what Jesus accomplishes here, or really what the victim achieves here. He halts the cycle of violence, he embarrasses the aggressor, and he may even get him in trouble. Ding, ding, ding. It's a trifecta. It's shrewd, it's masterful, it's brilliant, it's Jesus. Surprised? Now I grant you, the societal norms and mores, those assumptions and rules for engagement are different today. No question about that. We live in a different time. We live in a different culture. To be a biblical literalist would invite grave personal injury. So, we must alter our tactics to meet our contemporary situation. Yet, still retain Jesus' strategic goal of aggressive, nonviolent resistance. We take Jesus seriously, but not literally. Got to change things up for our day. We need to apply his teaching in our time as Gandhi did in his time, as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did in his time. They took the basic teaching and changed it up in a way that works. And so when we do it, it means that we are being faithful to the gospel while creatively and prayerfully employing the wise inspiration of the Holy Spirit. Always a good thing for disciples. Next week, we'll learn more about all of this when we address Jesus' other famous instructions, giving the shirt off of our backs. Where will that take us? And going the extra mile, taking the sermon to the streets. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen.